this computer. Kia ora, Jarrod. It's so great to see you.
Kia ora, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and thanks for coming back. We obviously had a bit of a false start with our webinar at the end of the last year, but a benefit is we get to catch up with you one-on-one.
Yeah, even better, right? We can split it up.
Totally. For those joining us today, I'm lucky enough to be with Kiwibank's Chief Economist, Jarrod Kerr, and we're going to have a bit of a kōrero around these impending changes where we might see financial literacy in our schools across Aotearoa as it's made compulsory or mandated. So very exciting, and thanks for coming along. Shall we get into it, Jarrod?
Absolutely. Let's get involved.
Cool. Well, to set the scene, I was wondering, would you be able to give us a bit of a snapshot around what's actually happening in our economy today? What are some of the forces at play and how does that affect us as individuals?
Yeah, I think we're in quite a challenging period, and we have been for a while. I've been describing the current situation as being quite awkward for many people, to put it politely. We've seen interest rates rise quite rapidly over the last year and a half. Inflation has been very high for quite a long time, and many households are feeling that. Household budgets have been stretched by higher interest rates and
Mm.
higher inflation, and wages just haven't kept up. And we're seeing pressures starting to mount in rents as well. So on top of all of these issues, rents are starting to rise, and that's on the back of a migration boom, which
Mm.
none of us thought would be this large. It's 4 times larger than we had forecast. We thought we'd see a 40,000 net increase. We're up
Mm.
around 130. So that's a
Wow.
quite a staggering increase in people. And when you see that number of people come into an economy, they are, providing labour, which is great. So we're increasing the supply of people available, and they generally just take the wage that's there. So put a bit of downward pressure on wages on the one side, but on the
Mhm.
other side, they need a house to rent, they need a car, they need some furniture, probably some other bits and pieces here and there, and they put pressure on our health system, our education system, etc. So what I'm kind of saying is that New Zealanders aren't very good at infrastructure investment. We're not good
Mm.
at our infrastructure investment at the council level, and we're definitely not good at the government level. We tend to underinvest, and we have done for the last 4 decades. So that's coming to bite as well. We simply don't have the infrastructure or the number of houses for these people. So it is challenging times, not just for Kiwis, but also for fresh migrants into the country.
It's really interesting. I had no idea that our net migration was so high against forecasts. I love the word awkward to describe our economy. You're right, it is a kind descriptor. The cool thing with awkward situations means they're typically quite interesting. And when I think about financial education, that's quite an interesting backdrop to be teaching our rangatahi about money in this context.
Oh, absolutely. Like you would have been picking up on bits and pieces that I was saying, but interest
Yeah.
rates is one thing that kids need to learn about. Their financial situation, what their wages are doing, relative to inflation, and what
Mm.
is inflation. Not many people kind of have a real understanding that it's the prices of everything,
Yeah.
and the prices of everything are increasing. So this is actually like an awesome period to be teaching the young exactly what can happen in the extremes. I mean,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, we had interest rates near zero. You could get a mortgage rate for 2%, which is unheard of. Now that mortgage rate's at 7%.
Mm.
Imagine taking out a loan with a 2% rate, and just a couple of years later, you're on 7. And you'd kind of budgeted on 2, and you thought that 2 was all you were going to pay. You wake up, a year and a half later, and you're at 7. That's a shock, and it's something that even experienced people don't seem to budget or prepare well for.
Yeah, it's such a good case study. I mean, it's real life for sure, but also in the classroom, such a good case study. And my
Mm.
mind's just ticking over. You talked about so many keywords that could create really rich lessons and also really strong numeracy capabilities if you are doing that kind of modeling. Really interesting stuff. When we think about our current awkwardish economy. If we cast our minds forward a little bit, how do you think compulsory financial literacy in school could morph and change our economy over time?
Well, for me, it's that level of knowledge, that level of understanding, that confidence that
Mm,
your program is giving the children that do it, right? You come out into the real world, you've already played around with buying a house, on Banqer. You've already played around with budgeting. You've played around with a lot of life skills that for someone like me, I had to learn while I was go through university, and when I actually left home quite late at sort of 22, 23, and you had to learn all about renting and all of that. Children who go through a course like this come out better armed. And I
mm,
think, you know when economists talk about the dream of productivity growth, this better wealth distribution, this growing wealth of Kiwis, measured by productivity, having that better level of education is a key part. It's a
mm,
very important part of that puzzle. So having people coming out with a better understanding, higher levels of savings, getting into
mm.
houses potentially earlier than they otherwise would, all these things are a big positive for our future outlook.
It's so true. It's interesting you started with confidence because internally we do a lot of impact reporting. We have this awesome data set of, the next generation and how they engage in our platform. And we use that to enhance our platform and ultimately create greater impact. But one of the things we've found as well is aside knowledge is important. We want our students to develop knowledge, understand what terms and definitions mean, how to do certain calculations. Capability is important. The behaviors, increase savings, that's a behavioral thing. But actually, the biggest sort of indicator of financial success is shaping out to be confidence. So not only knowing how to do the things, but actually feeling like you can do the things. So that's interesting that, you talk about that in a real world context. So,
Yeah, I think confidence is key to a lot of things. You speak to a lot of sports people,
mm,
confidence is always somewhere, in their mindset, and being able to fuel that confidence for success. And I think that also works in the workplace, right? You get someone who comes in who's confident,
mm,
keen, and that they're going to strive, they're going to do better, with that confidence. If you don't have the confidence, you won't take on that extra little bit of work because you're not sure you can do it properly. Or if you're not confident, you might not go down to the bank and ask what can be done for you.
mm,
One thing that has really surprised me, and it seems to have stayed the same over the 20 odd years that I've been in banking, is just the lack of confidence, to use that word again, in
mm,
in dealing with the bank. People are actually
mm.
afraid of bank managers. They come in, they're very worried. Can we do this? Can we not do this? Whereas when I walk into a bank, this is what I want to do.
I mean, that's
Let's
such
get
a
it
key
done.
shift, isn't it? And I really do hope that having more financial literacy in school in whatever shape or form will drive that confidence. Just practice,
Yeah.
familiarity with words, just knowing that you can walk into a bank and demand what you want kindly.
Yeah, exactly. And shopping around too, I think's quite
Very
key.
true.
But yeah, I think if we just build that understanding, it is amazing, the number of people who will take on a credit card but not understand just how
Mm,
high the interest rate is on that credit
yeah,
card, and the situations that people get themselves in, really sad at the end of the day, but easily avoidable with just a bit of financial literacy training.
so true. I think we're gonna see some changes with this next generation. My fingers are crossed.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you will.
And as we sort of think about not the students and the next generation, but those who are enabling that, the educators, my mind, I love our banker educators. They're extremely passionate. In some instances, they're typically the teachers who are, their mindset works that way anyway. They're inherently
Mm.
interested in financial literacy. As we see more schools adopting financial literacy over the coming years, I'm thinking about the teachers who don't necessarily have their fingers on the pulse. This isn't their thing. They're not
Mm,
tracking inflation on a
yeah.
Friday night for fun. How would you advise those teachers who may be finding themselves becoming financial educators soon to stay across our economy, changes, trends? Is there any advice you can impart?
Yeah, I'll give the same advice my economics teacher gave me when I was
Oh,
14,
okay.
and that is go to the Reserve Bank and read their monetary policy statement. And you
Okay.
know what? You get 4 a year. So you're not inundated. There are only 4 that they produce. So you get hold of it. It's a big document. It's scary at first. You won't understand half of it, but you just start reading it. And what they do is really, really clever. They tell you what's going on internationally, which is important for New Zealand, but they only talk about what's important for New Zealand on the
Hmm.
international stage. They talk a lot about what's happening within New Zealand, within financial markets. By the time you can just skim through it. By the time you've skimmed through it, you've actually got, you know, the perfect outline of what's happening in the economy right here, right now, and their forecasts, what they're thinking. So forget everything else. Definitely forget the news. It's
Okay.
the news is just too up in the air and what's happening on the day. You get this one doc, have a good look at it. Reserve Bank's monetary policy statement. The next one comes out in February, and it tells you everything you need to know. Now, I started reading those at the age of 14. I can tell you they were very difficult, but you know, by probably the fourth one that I read, I had a really good understanding of everything within it, and I've been reading them ever since.
That is epic advice and super practical. I'm definitely getting that in my calendar for February, that's for sure. And I think if that's your key to success, 14-year-old Jarrod reading those and you've ended up as chief economist, we should all be taking that advice, that's for sure.
Well,
So
not
thanks, Jarrod.
everyone's going to want to be an economist, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, but I can imagine, and look, I've got to be honest, I don't know how chunky the stock is, so maybe I'll eat my words later. But having that in one place that you can go with confidence from a credible source,
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to find these days. And I think about lesson planning and making sure we talked about case studies and context earlier. This would be a fantastic resource for that.
Yeah, I think it is. They obviously spend a lot of time on it. It has
Mm,
evolved over the years. In the last few years, they've made it a lot easier to read. They've really
cool.
slimmed it down and made it easier to consume, which is great.
Mm,
And they've left the hard bits and pieces towards the end for the economist, basically. So the document
great.
itself reads a lot better, a lot easier. And I'll tell you what, it tells you everything you need to know.
Brilliant. Well, you've certainly delivered on that request. Thanks so much, Jarrod. And we're going to leave it there, I think. You've given us so much to ponder and think about. Obviously, we've got still a bit of water to go under the bridge with these changes in our schools, but Jarrod, we'd love to stay in touch with you as things unfold if you're up for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Awesome.
you're doing a fantastic job over there.
Thank
It's
you.
it's just great seeing what you've been doing over the last 6 years.
Thank you so much. We've had a bit of fun doing it too, so can't complain.
Very good.
Awesome. We'll leave you to it. Thanks, Jarrod.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.